It's November 2017 near the village of Asuka, southeast of Osaka, Japan. Travel vlogger Doug Merritt is filming his trek through the surrounding hills and forest when he arrives at his destination.
I think I see it right in front of me. Wow. It's actually bigger than I expected.
His video shows a gigantic stone structure rising above the dense forest floor on a hillside. There's an indentation down the middle with two rectangular holes on either end. Made of solid granite, the carved mound is 36 by 26 feet and stands 15 feet high.
The stone seemed to be out of place there at the top of the hill. It was just sitting there, appearing to have just fallen from the sky out of nowhere.
Mars researcher George Haas says this 800-ton carved boulder is known as Masuda no Iwafune, which means the rock ship of Masuda. Some believe it's tied to a Japanese legend put into writing in the early 1800s.
A group of fishermen noticed an unusual spacecraft landing in the distance in the water. The ship came to shore, a door opened, and they could see a lovely woman coming out of the spacecraft. And she started speaking to them in a language they had never heard before. And as soon as she got there, she got back into the craft and flew away, never to be heard of again.
So is the rock ship of Masuda a carving to commemorate this encounter? Some believe it looks like the hollow ship drawings. But most think it's a lot older, dating to Japan's old mound period between 250 and 500 AD. During that time, in the same area as the rock ship, the ancient Japanese built several giant keyhole-shaped formations. And here's where it gets weird. George Haas says similar formations are found in one other place, Mars. Look at them side by side. The photo on the right was taken by NASA.
This structure on Mars is completely symmetrical. It's a keyhole formation with a circular mound at the top and a triangular form at the bottom.
Is there a connection between this part of Japan and the Red Planet? Something that had cosmic visitors interested in both? The Valley of Asuka, where the rock ship and these tombs are found, is considered the birthplace of Japanese civilization. Many cultural transformations, including the introduction of Buddhism, began there around 500 AD, but little is known about the era before that. So what can our experts dig up? Archaeologist Dr. Ed Barnhart considers if the rock ship of Masuda could have anything to do with the legend of the hollow ship.
There's a whole myth around this magical woman. It was actually documented in 3 historic texts that talked about the same story.
Still, Barnhart agrees the formation is much older than the rock ship legend of the early 1800s. He joins other experts who place its creation to that period of ancient Japan when the keyhole formations were built. Barnhart adds that those strange keyholes on Mars are most certainly the result of natural forces like erosion, while the Japanese keyholes are man-made tombs.
This is a very religiously steeped area, and at a time period called the tumulus period, there were a number of stone-built and carved tombs in the area. So this may fall into that tradition.
Okay. Then since the rock ship of Masuda was found near these tumulus-era burial mounds, could it also be a tomb? Anthropologist Kathy Strain investigates.
What we do know is that this area was used a lot during the Great Burial Period. And so it's quite possible that this was the start of a burial and it ended up getting abandoned because it got a crack in it. So then it's not perfect anymore.
But Barnhart has another idea. It relates to the ancient practice of fermenting rice to make the brewed alcohol sake.
There's another stone in the area called the sake boat stone that has a variety of circular holes and canals that functionally could be used in the process of sake making, skimming the top of one, making it more pure in the other ones as the canal feeds the process through. This one is very different though. The holes are deep, there's only 2 of them. They don't actually align up very well to let one skim the other.
It's an interesting theory, but at this point that's all it is. There's no evidence for the tomb or the sake theory either in the written or archaeological records. All we have is the stone and our best guesses. Our verdict, it is still unknown exactly who carved this mound and why. The legend of the hollow ship UFO also remains a nazo. That's Japanese for mystery. But there are enough independent accounts of it that we're not ruling out a close encounter of the Japanese kind.
Japan's Ryukyu Islands extend almost to Taiwan, and they've long been an attraction to divers. Most come to see hammerhead sharks. But in 1986, Deborah Dixon Smith came for another reason. She was there to get a special tour of the official site known as Yonaguni.
You go in this dramatic entrance. It was like stepping back in time.
Once out through the other side, a whole city seems to appear.
It really just was one of those wow moments. And when you look over the edge, you can see down into this very, very deep gully. It was very dramatic.
Let's take another look at the details here. There are straight lines, steps, and sharp angles.
It seems to be that whatever this structure is, somebody built it there, and sea levels rose enough that it got submerged.
In this artist's rendering, it looks like a small city or a compound with a pyramid. And as Deborah learned, the site may be connected to an ancient legend.
There's a theory that the video is evidence of an ancient Japanese civilization known as Yamatai. It's said to have been a large, powerful nation that was wiped off the face of the world when sea waters rose and their cities were buried under ocean water.
Yamatai is said to have been ruled by a secretive sorceress named Himiko. Its location has never been determined, much less the reasons for its disappearance.
Here's the thing. Unlike Atlantis, the existence of Yamatai shows up in historic documents from around 300 AD. There's even a record of their queen, Himiko, sending an envoy to the Chinese emperor. The theory is that Yamatai sank due to the shifting tectonic plates in the region. But what's the real story? Let's see how our experts tell it.
Geologist Bob Anderson says it's not unreasonable to think this site was once on dry land.
If you go back 20,000 years ago, the shorelines moved around to different places, so you can't rule out that that was above water.
But did humans build it? The strongest evidence are those angles and steps. They seem too perfect to be formed by nature, at least to our eye. But it turns out that can happen naturally.
These are the sorts of things that geologic formations can break into because of earthquakes or tsunamis as they move. Those plates break in very, very geometric forms. There's no reason to believe that they had to be cut by man.
But if this is all natural, wouldn't we expect to see similar structures all over the planet?
This site is a geological phenomena. I don't know of another area where that large of stones have been moved in that kind of formation. But that does not make it a structure.
One big issue. Barnhart says these massive steps are actually larger than anything ever sculpted, carved, or constructed in the ancient world. And even though this is the most seismically active area of the entire planet, you'd still expect to find more evidence of a prior civilization if one had been here.
These large slabs, you'd expect at least in the cracks to find some sort of evidence of human occupation if it indeed was some sort of sunken place. There's nothing like that whatsoever. Archaeology calls those things geofacts. They look like artifacts, but in fact, they're naturally formed.
Based on Barnhart and Anderson's expertise, we're going to conclude that this site is a natural phenomenon. That means it's not the lost kingdom of Yamatai. Its location is still a mystery. So if you're diving off the coast of Japan, keep your eyes open.
February 2nd, 2022. Scientists in Japan open a box said to contain a mythical creature captured by a fisherman in the Pacific Ocean in the 1700s. According to legend, the mummified body in this box was passed down from generation to generation until now. Inside the box is a bizarre mummy that measures 12 inches long and leaves scientists baffled. Using a CT scan, paleontologists are now looking into the 300-year-old mummy's origins. Researchers are also using DNA samples to identify which known species, if any, the creature is made of. Take another look at this oddity. It has hollowed-out eye sockets,
pointy fang-like teeth, hands, and a fish-like tail complete with scales and a small flipper. What is this thing? Field researcher Ken Gerhardt says Japan has a long tradition of merfolk, even though their folklore might be a bit different than what we're used to.
In Japanese culture, we have some very distinct types of mermaids. One in particular is known as the Ningyo. Unlike the beautiful, glamorous Western mermaid, the Ningyo is described as being hideous and, frankly, the stuff of otherworldly nightmares. It is usually depicted as being fish-like, but with varying degrees of humanoid features. The Ningyo is often described as having a monkey-like mouth full of razor-sharp teeth, like we're seeing here.
The Ningyo first appeared in ancient Japanese text 2,600 years ago, and it said that if one were to eat a Ningyo, you'd add centuries to your life.
There's one account of a woman who once ate a Ningyo and lived for 800 years. Still others conjecture that this creature could in fact be another type of Japanese mermaid known as the amabie. Now, the amabie is said to have long flowing hair and it's covered in scales. It is said that the amabie first appeared in relation to a pandemic that happened centuries ago, and that this light or glow that was emitted from the amabie was sort of taken to be a warning that this pandemic was coming.
In the early part of 2020, when the worldwide pandemic hit, people in Japan began to sketch visions of the amabie and post them online because looking at a picture of an amabie is said to ward off disease. In other cultures, mermaids are said to possess 4 main powers: immortality, telepathy, hypnosis, and clairvoyance. For more clairvoyance on this mystery, we turn to our experts. First, Professor of Anatomy and Anthropology, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, dives into the Ningyo theory.
A Ninyigo is described as being the size of a seal and has a face like a monkey. So in those respects, this relic would seem to align with this identification. On the other hand, if you consume its flesh, you will be endowed with everlasting life. That then begs the question why someone would preserve the remains of such a creature as a relic as opposed to serving it up for dinner and reaping the benefits of that immortality.
Of course, maybe the person who found it didn't want to live for 800 years, or was saving it for someone who did. Remember, it was preserved in a box by priests like a kind of heirloom. Next, marine biologist Shay Conger considers whether this could be the amabie.
The amabie is said to have some sort of transformative powers, and one of these is that it's able to form legs to walk on the shore, and it's said to have 3 appendages. This creature doesn't seem to have anything like that. It actually seems to just have a tail or a fin.
Conger also points out that a mermaid with this body type would be unlikely to survive in the ocean.
Something like this would have a really difficult time thermal regulating. The fact that a mermaid has long limbs and arms and usually a head situated on its neck wouldn't be very advantageous. And that's because living in an aquatic environment sucks a lot of body heat away from you. Marine animals are actually fusiform in body shape, meaning that they are oval shaped. They don't have a defined neck. Seals and sea lions and whales have a lot of blubber around their shoulders and neck because it keeps their head and their central nervous system warm. So a creature that had a human head like this actually would be very cold.
So could this all be a hoax worthy of P.T. Barnum?
Some objects, like for example the Fiji mermaid, were determined to be a salmon taxidermied with some kind of a primate. And in some cases they were orangutans.
No evidence of sutures has been found, though a hidden stitch is commonly used in taxidermy for facial repair and in very short-haired areas, like the one we see here between the belly and the fin.
The fact that we don't necessarily know if this is a real animal or if it ever lived doesn't diminish the cultural importance of what we're looking at, because they directly reflect some really important nature-based religious aspects of Japanese culture.
Our verdict? Unexplained object. The paleontologists will soon release their results, and while Conger believes this is a hoax, until those DNA tests come back, we're going to say, we just don't know. It's January 17th, 2019. Art student Kohei Katawaki says he is hiking through the dense woods near his home in Chichibu City, Japan, when he comes upon a figure that is totally alien to him. The footage and photos show what looks like the skeletal remains of some creature, but what? As we zoom in for a closer look, we can see it has strange, long, twisted talons. Its spine is severely bent with a bone structure that looks almost bird-like. But then there's the head, which is more square-shaped, which conjures the image of Hollywood extraterrestrials. And we see 2 rows of yellow humanoid-like teeth. It's no wonder Kohei was compelled to post the video online.
Obviously, one theory about this thing is that it is not of this world. There are things about it that are very E.T. by way of a giraffe. It does sort of have the head shape that a gray alien might have.
As we mentioned earlier, gray aliens are the most frequently cited extraterrestrials in reports of close encounters and abductions, such as the famous Barney and Betty Hill abduction claim from 1961. They described grays as having small, hairless humanoid bodies with large heads and black eyeballs. These remains fit that description somewhat, but there are other possibilities as well.
Maybe this creature is the result of radiation fallout. Japan was the site of 2 nuclear detonations in World War II, and more recently there was the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster, which was rated a number 7 on the International Nuclear and Radiological Event Scale, which was the same as Chernobyl.
A lot of speculation on this one. There was even buzz that it was some kind of biological experiment gone wrong. The obvious explanation is that it's a hoax, but gray alien sightings are always a hot topic. So we'll give this figure its day in court. First, we take the footage to anthropologist Kathy Strain, who has researched accounts of gray aliens. So how does this corpse compare?
When people talk about the grays, they usually bring up that there's little ones and there's big ones. And the larger ones have very long necks and they're very skinny. And this doesn't really look like that because the proportion with the long neck and the head isn't correct for it to be one of the taller grays. The legs should be much, much longer. The arms should be much longer. Everything should be scaled upward in size.
What about the nuclear radiation theory?
The chances that the skeletons are still out in the wild is unlikely.
Raccoons eat dead animals, and they are so prevalent in Japan, their overpopulation is causing a national hubbub. In the past decade, the country's raccoon population has tripled. Strange says any corpse decomposing in the woods outside Chichibu since the 2011 Fukushima disaster would have been picked apart by wildlife scavengers. And she points out something else that bothers her.
Its eye sockets are too small to actually have an exterior eyeball. You may be born without physical exterior eyes, but you would still have human-sized eye sockets below the skin.
Microphthalmia is a phenomenon in which someone's born with 1 or 2 eyes that are very small. The eye sockets on this creature are small, but they appear too tiny even for a creature with microphthalmia. Biologist Floyd Hayes is also skeptical that these remains ever belong to a living being.
There are ways in which we could change the morphology of animal, typically by giving it an extra limb or a digit or even a head. But to get something to change so dramatically, like the entire head shape, so it's sticking out on both sides or a much longer neck, that's much more difficult to do.
Hayes is left with one remaining possibility.
I believe this is a hoax.
Given that none of the theories seem to hold up, we tracked down Kohei in Japan. And when pressed, he admitted the alien corpse is a project he created for his studies at Tokyo University of the Arts.
それも、その父親が買ってきたその本っていうのもインスピレーションの一つにあると思いますし、絵本がインスピレーションのもとに結構いっぱいあるのではと思ってまして、やっぱり心のどっか 1-2% では本気で、宇宙人とかってやっぱいるんじゃないかなって信じてるんですよね。なので。
So, mystery solved. This was a clever hoax.